Hi everyone, welcome. My name is María Blanco. I am a senior lecturer in Spanish at the University of Westminster and a language learning strategies coach. In this video, I'm going to introduce you to strategies that will help you to make the process of learning vocabulary effective and enjoyable. You will learn about your current learning strategies and the challenges you experience in learning new vocabulary. About 2 approaches that will help you expand your vocabulary effectively. And about 3 keys for memorizing specific new vocabulary really well. As part of the video, I will ask you questions that will help you become aware of how you are learning right now and how you can improve your language learning skills. Let's get started with 3 basic questions. Number 1, what strategies have you used to learn vocabulary so far? Number 2, what strategies have worked well for you? Number 3, what challenges do you experience when learning vocabulary? Perhaps you have never thought about these questions before. That's okay. Remember that your strategies could be something as simple as writing down several times new words you want to learn, or maybe a more elaborate strategy like keeping a vocabulary notebook, using mind maps, or doing extensive reading. It could also be that you have learned vocabulary by immersing yourself in social interactions with native speakers. I encourage you to pause the video now and reflect a bit about these 3 questions. Or even better, talk about this with a partner or a group if you are watching this video with other people who are learning languages. Why is it important to learn vocabulary effectively? It is important to learn vocabulary effectively because vocabulary is the most essential element of any language. The more you have, the more you understand others, and the better you can express yourself in a language. So one of the best things that you can do for yourselves when learning any language is to use strategies that help you expand your vocabulary. How can you learn vocabulary effectively? There are many different ways of learning new vocabulary. We are going to focus on 2 approaches which are highly effective, particularly when we combine them together. Approach number 1, exposure to interesting and comprehensible language input. Approach number 2, focused study. Let's discuss the first approach, exposure to interesting and comprehensible language input. This may sound a bit abstract to you. Let's unpack it. What is language input? Language input is simply the language that you are exposed to. Every time you are reading, you are getting language input. And every time you are listening, you are getting language input. Comprehensible language input refers to the reading and listening input that you can understand. If you are reading a text or listening to an audio or person, and you can understand what is written or what has been said, that is comprehensible language input. If when you are reading or listening, you need to check many times the meaning of words and you can hardly follow what is written or said, then that is not comprehensible input. Interesting means what the word says. Here it refers to engaging in reading and listening activities on topics that you find interesting. And why? Not only because it's more enjoyable, but also because we naturally pay more attention to and remember better anything we are interested in. The best comprehensible language input for learning new vocabulary is the input you find in reading texts or audios or conversations that are neither too easy nor too hard for you. If it is too easy, you will not get enough exposure to new vocabulary. And if it is too hard, you will lose motivation and struggle to make connections. The language input should be slightly above your current level of competence for you to pick up new vocabulary with ease. I highly recommend you get good amounts of interesting and comprehensible language input on a regular basis. Get into the habit of reading books, listening to songs, watching films regularly. It will pay off. Flooding your mind with interesting and comprehensible language input on a regular basis will greatly accelerate your process of learning new words and phrases. And there are plenty of digital and printed resources for getting interesting and comprehensible language input. Graded readers that include audio versions are an excellent resource, particularly for beginners and lower intermediate students. There are also excellent YouTube videos and TV programs designed for language learners, as well as other easily accessible sources of authentic input like video games, songs, and podcasts. And remember that if you are a beginner or lower intermediate level student and you find it too difficult to understand the original versions of films or documentaries, you simply need to use subtitles to make the language input comprehensible. Focused study. Another way of learning vocabulary effectively is by focusing on the study of specific words and phrases, aiming to memorize them well so that you can recall and use them later when you are speaking, writing, listening, or reading. This is what we often do when, for example, we study vocabulary lists to pass a language exam. What is the best way of practicing focused study? There are 3 key steps that make focused study more effective. Number 1, creating multiple associations. Number 2, doing spaced revision. Number 3, engaging in recall practice. Let's look at step 1, create multiple associations. To create multiple associations, you need to associate new words with things or language you are already familiar with. For example, let's imagine that you are wanting to memorize the Spanish word pasear. To create multiple associations, you can, for example, learn the translation. Pasear means to go for a walk. You can learn it as a collocation. Pasear por el parque, pasear por la playa, pasear por el campo, pasear al perro. You could also contextualize the new word or collocation in a sentence. Me gusta mucho pasear por el campo con mis amigos. You could also associate the word with a picture or image. Research into cognitive psychology and neuroscience shows that multisensorial learning works best for long-term retention. So it will help if you read the word, write the word, listen to the word, and say the word out loud. We also remember best information that is organized in meaningful ways. You can do this by creating a vocabulary notebook where you could include new words and phrases and collocations. You could also create sets of flashcards, again organized by topics. Mind maps are also excellent for organizing vocabulary and creating multiple connections. Step 2. Do spaced revision. To do spaced revision, you need to space out your revision periods. This strategy is also well supported by research. Researchers have found that repetitions spaced out over time generate greater long-term retention than crammed revision, just as we were told at school. One way of ensuring you include spaced revision in your learning experience is to create a schedule for that. A time when you will focus on revising the vocabulary you are learning. The revision period does not have to be long. Spending 30 minutes per week revising vocabulary can make a big difference to your ability to understand and express yourself when you are reading, listening, speaking, and writing. So try to do it. Step 3. Engage in recall practice. To engage in recall practice means that you need to bring the new vocabulary to your mind from memory. You need to make an effort to recall as much as possible of what you have studied. You can do that silently in your mind, or by saying it out loud, or by writing without looking at your notes, books or flashcards. Then, as soon as possible after that, you should self-check the answers to get feedback on what you got right and what you need to work on more. Researchers have found that the effort we put into recall practice is critical for strengthening our memories and helps to create pathways for recall. A simple and effective way to practice recall is called cover and check. This strategy is very suitable for practicing with vocabulary notebooks and flashcards. For example, if you are learning Spanish, you could write down your list of new Spanish words on the left side of a page and a parallel list on the right side with the translation of those Spanish words into your mother tongue or another language you know well. Then you would look at the Spanish list, cover the translations, and try to recall them, and the other way around. You would cover your mother tongue list and try to recall the Spanish words. With flashcards, you could have the Spanish word or collocation or question or sentence on one side and the translation on the other side. The important thing in recall practice is that you do not see the translation without first making the effort to recall it. Active recap. Okay, so now it's time for a recap. Please reflect on or discuss with a partner the answer to the following questions. What have you learned about the way you have learned vocabulary so far? What strategies have worked well for you and what have been the challenges? Why is learning vocabulary effectively so important for a language learner? What two vocabulary learning approaches will help you expand your vocabulary with ease? What are the 3 key steps for memorizing new specific vocabulary really well? If you could answer all the questions in the recap, great! If not, it's not a problem. You can always play the video again and take notes. It's worth it to learn the approaches and strategies we mentioned so that you can make the best of your experience of learning vocabulary. When you put the strategies into practice, you will see that they will help you expand and memorize vocabulary in an effective and enjoyable way. You will get good results, and that will increase your motivation and confidence as a language learner. So do not hesitate to experiment with the strategies and adapt them to suit your language learning context. That's all from us. Thank you for watching. We wish you a very happy vocabulary language learning experience.